Did you know that during their service, volunteers could be victims of harassment and even sexual assault? Hi, I am Natalia.
And I am Javier. Talking about sexual harassment and abuse is always more complex than it sounds. We want to share how the Peace Corps defines these concepts, what their consequences are, and how we can support the volunteers who may suffer it.
Peace Corps defines harassment as attention, often of a sexual nature, that is unwanted.
In our society, many sexual behaviors or sexist comments are seen as acceptable or as part of the culture. This is very serious because it goes against a person's dignity. Let's see some examples.
Street harassment is offensive or unpleasant sexual comments, hisses, insults, following, masturbation in public, and touching. Workplace harassment, use of phrases or jokes with double meaning, after hours meetings or private invitations. Harassment in the homestay, usually well-intentioned comments meant as a joke about the body, physical appearance, or sexual orientation of the volunteer. Questions or actions that lead to a violation of privacy, private invitations, wanting to match them with someone from the family or community. And cyberbullying, inappropriate messages with sexual and personal content, insistence on asking volunteers out, and invasion of privacy on social media. Stalking, when this harassment behavior occurs repeatedly and or involve actions such as messages, calls, visits, gifts, etc., a toxic environment is created for the volunteer, who many times comes not only to fear for their safety, but also experience great emotional stress accompanied by depression, anger, isolation, and therefore affects their ability to serve in the community.
And what is sexual abuse according to the Peace Corps? It is physical contact of a sexual nature without the consent of the other person, and it is more dangerous than sexual harassment. There are many myths around the topic of sexual abuse. One of them, for example, is that most sexual assaults are carried out by people unknown to the victim. We know that this is false. The majority of sexual assaults are carried out by someone close to the victim. Other common myths are the assaulted person brought it upon themselves because of the way they dress, because they drank too much, because they acted provocatively or walked through dark or lonely places. The reality is that sexual harassment and abuse can happen to anyone regardless of age, ethnicity, sexual orientation, or gender identity. But nobody asks for or deserves to be a victim of sexual assault.
It is very important to talk about the concept of consent. Peace Corps defines consent as words or actions that demonstrate that a person freely agrees to have sexual activity with another person. Consent is not permanent. The person can agree at the beginning, but in the course of sexual activity, they have the right to change their minds.
Similarly, consent cannot be given if someone is under the influence of drugs or alcohol.
While each survivor of sexual violence reacts in a unique way, the consequences can manifest themselves for many years. The impact of sexual harassment or abuse against volunteers also extends to those around them or even to the community where they serve. When a sexual assault occurs in a community, it can create an atmosphere of fear, anger, or even disbelief.
There could be consequences like physical injury, unwanted pregnancy, and sexually transmitted diseases.
Also, psychological and emotional ones, such as depression, anger, fear, guilt, anxiety, shame, and shock.
In addition, there are other consequences such as self-medication, insomnia, eating disorders, and self-harm. For this reason, supporting volunteers is very important. How can we best do this, Natalia?
First, ask the volunteer directly how they feel. This shows that you care about their safety. It is important to understand and support the other person's concerns and to get involved. We must listen without judging and never minimize the situation. This will show that we are supporting them. Reaffirming their innocence is very important. Sexual harassment or abuse is never the victim's fault. Second, when you see a situation that you think could put the volunteer at risk, you should tell them so. Remember that the host family and counterparts know the community much better than the volunteer and can advise them on areas or people to avoid. In this way, we reduce the risk of dangerous situations. It is important that families and partners show them around the community, introduce them to community leaders and neighbors so they can have a support network. Third, in some sexual harassment situations, the family or partner may speak or request the support of someone they trust to speak to directly to the person who is behaving inappropriately and explain to that person that their words and actions are unacceptable. Above all, it is very important to emphasize that neither the family nor the counterpart should take any action that could put their own safety or that of others at risk. Fourth, in other cases, the family or counterpart can teach the correct words, phrases in local language to stop a harassment situation, as long as the volunteer feels comfortable doing it. In many cases, this could stop the bullying situation before it gets worse.
Both families and counterparts can always contact the Peace Corps when they feel that this can help them mitigate the situation. In the event of sexual assault, on the other hand, the most important thing is not to get directly involved. For example, report to the police or investigate on your own, but rather to recommend that the volunteer report the situation directly to the Peace Corps. The Peace Corps offers its volunteers a support network for the prevention and management of cases of sexual violence. This support begins with a mitigation and a prevention plan and includes medical assistance and psychological support.
In addition, victims of sexual harassment and assault have legal assistance if they want to file a police report. These services will only be available if the victim reports the situation to the Peace Corps. That is why reporting is so important.
Let's remember, our efforts could help volunteers have a service free from sexual harassment and assault.